directly. The Great Wall Restaurant is located at 4515 France Avenue, and their full menu is available at greatwallrestaurant.us. That's greatwallrestaurant.us.
Portions of the following program may be pre-recorded.
Broadcasting from the studios of AM 950 KTNF, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's progressive talk. Welcome to The Gailey Show, the only daily LGBTQ radio news and talk show in the United States. I'm your host, John Parker, in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds.
Hey, all.
Big show today, which is why I'm talking extra fast. At the bottom of the hour, 2025 Chicago Journalist of the Year and managing editor of Windy City Times, Jake Wittich, will be back. He joins us bi-weekly on Wednesdays, and he is helping us with our 2026 election coverage from the Windy City with a profile of Zoey Carter's campaign for the Illinois State House. But up first, breaking news from the ACLU of Minnesota yesterday. There are still 970 ICE and Customs Border Patrol agents here in Minnesota for Operation Metro Surge. An additional 407 will remain in the state in Minnesota. And according to Minneapolis City Council President Elliott Payne, this is on top of the 190 agents that were already stationed here prior to last December. The Minnesota legislature convened last week. Several bills have been introduced to curb ICE activities in the state and to hold ICE accountable. Joining us now is Minnesota House Representative Leigh Finke, who represents House District 66A. Representative Finke is the co-vice chair of the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee in the Minnesota House. Representative Finke, welcome back to The Gailey Show.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
All right, so you have introduced two bills in the current session to keep ICE accountable. The first one, and now knowing we've got about 1,000 agents who are still here in the state, the first one is related to masks. Can you tell us more about that bill?
Yeah, so this bill would, I call it the unmasked ICE bill, right? It would require that law enforcement who are federal agents follow Minnesota state law for our current local, state law enforcement officers and not cover their faces. You have to have the public trust if you are trying to enforce the law, and covering your face is a betrayal of that trust.
Mm-hmm. Their argument is that they'll get doxxed, that it's super dangerous to do, the work that they're doing right now. I would argue it's because of the way they're doing their work and being trained essentially, as we learned yesterday or on Monday from a House forum, Congressional House forum, about how they're being trained, ICE, to violate the Constitution. Can you talk more? Is there any pushback from the MAGA in the House to your bill?
Well, we heard this bill in the Public Safety Committee just yesterday, and there was significant pushback to my bill from the Republicans. And one of the major things that they said was that they would be doxxed. Right. And I think that it's important for us to address that problem. One, because people get doxxed. I got a dox this weekend because of a lie that's being told about me right now by those same Republicans. It is part of being in the world. And the idea that we are going to allow immigration enforcement to be the only law enforcement agency in the entire country that covers their faces is preposterous to me. Right. And it says only that we want immigrants to be treated differently. Mm-hmm. If you are arresting immigrants, you do not have to be held accountable for your actions. The FBI, the DOJ, no local law enforcement. There is not a single law enforcement agency in America that is permitted to cover their face on duty except for immigration enforcement. Mm-hmm. And we know it's because they get to treat people however they want. Mm-hmm. So this doxing concern, I think it's a total red herring. Do your job in a way that makes people not want to dox you.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Absolutely. So walk us through the mask. Is that a federal policy, like from DHS, because they're being trained to like go in and violate Fourth Amendment constitutional rights? Is that coming from them as well? And then Minnesota state law could override that? Is that how it works legally speaking?
There is no policy that they can or can't wear masks. They just are wearing masks, right? And I think that this is important whenever we're talking about ICE. They just do anything they want, right? And Customs and Border Patrol. It's the DHS agents. There's 3 branches of them, ICE, CPB, and then these DHS investigators, DHSI. And they get to do just whatever they want, right? And there is this idea that we can't do anything to regulate federal activity at all in the state of Minnesota, and that's just wrong. The Supremacy Clause that allows the federal government to overrule state law is only able to do so when you are talking about essential duties to perform your job, right? So for agents like we have seen, kidnapping, beating, harassing, killing Minnesotans in masks, those masks are not essential to do their job. They are wearing those masks for reasons other than essential duties to perform immigration enforcement.
Right.
So we absolutely do have the right to regulate this. And the other rule is you have to regulate all governments equally. And California got caught on this because they banned masks for federal agents, but not for their local and state agents. But we already had a mask ban. It is currently illegal for our local and state officers to wear masks. So we are actually on solid constitutional footing here.
How would that then be enforced? Like, who would be in charge of enforcing that? Like, would it be, if it happens in Minneapolis, then MPD would do that? St. Paul PD? Like, who does the enforcement of it?
Yeah, I mean, enforcement of this would be a real difficult question, right? It is up to our law enforcement officers to enforce the law.
Yep.
I think it's important for us to recognize that the people we are trying to regulate with state law, they do not follow state law. They do not follow federal law. They do not follow the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution. So there's no doubt in my mind that the individuals who we have just seen harassing, killing members of our communities way outside any bounds of the Constitution would ignore our state law. I do not think, however, that means we should not create a vision of Minnesota for the future that tries to protect against this ever happening again and gives us a ground from which we can fight back against any future action should we see what we saw in the past couple months come back.
We're talking with Minnesota House Representative Leigh Finke, who is co-vice chair of the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee in the Minnesota House, who has introduced 2 pieces of legislation to curb ICE activity and to keep them accountable, one being the mask law bill, rather. Jim, did you have a question?
Well, I'm wondering, it seems like an unusual reason to not pass a law because something might happen. Is that a common sort of thought process where someone says, well, if we do that, then all the locusts will come? That seems like an irrational thing to me.
We hear this all the time, right? And the idea that we should not pass a law because someone's going to break that law is, to me, that's just a stunning acquiescence of our state power, right? And you know, it's worth noting that, you know, Democrats in the state of Minnesota have become the fiercest advocates in the country for the independence of a state to govern itself. And there's this sort of traditional idea that Republicans are the state's rights people, but the Republicans in Minnesota folded immediately to a fascist authoritarian government that came in to terrorize its citizens. It is us on our side that is saying, we don't care if they're breaking the law, we have to do something about it. But we are absolutely hearing from Republicans in the House that, you know, they're not going to follow the law anyway, or we don't have the right to do that, so let's just not try.
Well, it's such, I mean, by that logic, why would you have any, it shouldn't be the law then for people to speed, because people are going to speed anyway, right? Or you can take that to, you know, its logical conclusion there. Representative Finke, you also have another bill related to vehicles that federal agents are using and how they should be marked, essentially with the federal logos or whatnot. Tell us about that bill.
Yeah, so this is the second part of what I'm calling my secret police bills. These are 2 bills that are addressing specifically what the community is experiencing, right? And if you think about a person who's in their home and you have a man in a mask with no identification, knocks on your door, puts you in handcuffs, and puts you into an unmarked vehicle. That is the kind of Gestapo-style tactics that we have seen throughout history. The secret police are noted for their masks and they're noted for their unmarked vehicles. So we need to be making sure that people can have any amount of public trust in our law enforcement. So this bill would say if you are using a vehicle expressly for the purpose of detaining individuals, that vehicle must be marked with appropriate law enforcement markings, and it also has to have safety mechanisms for everyone that is in the vehicle. Because when the ICE was in LA last summer, and I actually started working on this bill way before ICE got here, but they were rolled up to a park with a U-Haul, and they put people into the back of a U-Haul and then detained them. So this is like the basic human dignity. No matter who you are detaining, they should have a seatbelt. They should be treated with human dignity. You should know who is arresting them. If you are going to arrest them, you need to be able to say, this is who I work for, this is where we're going, and this is who I am. And that's what these two laws together are trying to do.
And the protection there is using their logic so that somebody doesn't come to your door, anybody doesn't come to your door and claim to be something and violate you. You know, it's the same sort of
Absolutely.
logic.
Absolutely. We had a person came to our committee yesterday to testify who is from outstate Minnesota, and they were harassed by two men in masks in a truck in plain clothes. And we have no idea who those people were. Were those agents of ICE? I mean, there's literally no way anyone will ever know.
Right.
And, you know, some communities have been harassed by people in trucks regardless of whether or not they work for the federal government.
Right.
And so what this really says is we need trust, public trust in law enforcement. And if our federal government is going to terrorize communities in masks, no IDs, no identification in unmarked cars, we are definitely going to see that being done by people who are not law enforcement.
That's right.
I think that as we're watching this, the key word here is terror. When we see the forums in Congress where, you know, government officials are saying, yeah, the whole point of third country deportations are to terrorize people, to self-deport. When we see Doug Wilson, the Christian nationalist pastor who's all excited about the terror tactics because he says it's getting people to self-deport, I think that it's just the terror, the level of terrorism that they're enacting in Minnesota and throughout the country is just, it's terrifying, which is why we are so glad, Representative Finke, for your time today and the work that you're doing in the Minnesota legislature to keep them accountable. You can reach Representative Finke through the Minnesota legislature website. And I'm sure if you, on Blue Sky and all the other socials, they can search for Representative Finke as well. Thank you so much, Representative, for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks.
Likewise. Folks, stay tuned. We're going to have more on The Gailey Show on AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota, and WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk.
Are you tired of hearing how white European men discovered everything? Then 10,000 Things Theater's production of Men on Boats by Jacqueline Backhouse is for you. It features a cast of the people the first expedition to the Grand Canyon in 1869 left out, running February 19th through March 15th at 4 different locations, starting with Open Book in Minneapolis. Contact 10,000things.org. That's 10,000things.org.
Hey, Francois, have you made any New Year's resolutions?
Non.
Well, mine is to learn some French. Can you help me?
Bien sûr.
How do you say this? Can I buy you?
Est-ce que je peux t'acheter
Macaroons from Nicolette's.
des macarons de Nicolette?
Now, say it all at once.
Est-ce que je peux t'acheter des macarons de Nicolette?
Oh, absolutely. I'll have a box of raspberry rose, blueberry cheesecake, and chocolate.
Mais c'est quoi ça?
Thank you, Francois. You can order them online at nicoletsmacaroons.com or visit their store in Plymouth. Merci.
Hi, this is Frank Brown of Minuteman Press Uptown with a question for our listeners. How important are business values to you? When you need high-quality digital print, it matters who you work with. You see, Minuteman Uptown is unique. We're one of the only union print shops in Minnesota providing our team with living wages and benefits. We believe in second chances for justice-impacted individuals who want to contribute to the community, and we are active in local issues. We've been in the streets standing up for racial, social, and economic justice. At Minuteman Uptown, our mission is to connect all communities through technology-driven print solutions. An example of that mission is when I moved Minuteman Uptown to North Minneapolis. We're invested in this local community, and we help small businesses and local organizations throughout the Twin Cities reach their audiences. Reach out to Minuteman Uptown and partner with a printer that shares your values. Call us today at 612-870-0777 or visit us at mpuptown.com. That's mpuptown.com.
Hi, I'm Mary T. Caring for others runs deep in my family. My grandmother, Rosa, was a nurse who cared for people in their homes more than a century ago. Inspired by her compassion, my mother, Margaret, and I founded the Mary T. family of companies nearly 50 years ago. Today, we continue that legacy across Minnesota, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Arizona, providing senior living, assisted living with memory care, home health, hospice care, rental housing, and support for people with disabilities. Each service is personal, creative, and focuses on the unique needs of those we serve. We also believe in joy and community, which is why we opened Crooner Supper Club in Fridley, a place to celebrate life with music, laughter, and connection. At Mary T., we're proud to be a Minnesota family company rooted in compassion, inclusion, and respect, and proud supporters of AM 950 and the values that this station represents. Visit marytinc.com to learn more.
Congratulations to Mary T., named one of the most admired CEOs of 2026 by the Minneapolis-St. Paul Business Journal.
Welcome back to the Daily Show. I am John Parker. We are coming up on the bottom of the hour, still in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds. So there was a State of the Union last night. The longest ever State of the Union address. I didn't watch it. Jim, you were in rehearsal for a show that you're doing that's going to open next week, and we're going to talk about that not today, but in an upcoming episode. But I am really curious because we always get these reactions in the moment from obviously the spinsters and the pollsters, not spinsters, but like the people who are going to in the spin room. And I know there's people like that are some stations or media outlets have people hooked up to monitors and they vote how they they like things. But I want to know if you're listening live right now, what did you think of these the address last night, State of the Union? If you watched it, I couldn't. I'm like, I'll just read the recap this morning. But if you watched it and you want to let us know what you thought, 952-946-6205, 952-946-6205. I would love. I'm not saying that to be facetious. I really want to know what folks thought of that, because that holy buckets, Batman, that was bonkers.
It's hard when you know
someone. What I read,
when you know someone's a congenital liar, you try to figure out, well, what would the point of that be? I mean, if you can't believe anything he says, and let's say you're an independent, they've also got to be feeling a little sick at their stomach, right? They've got to be like, ugh, is this really what is this America's golden age? Because I don't think very many people would say that. I'm sure 3 out of 10 would, but that's not very many people. So I'd be very curious what people thought too, because when you see the bile coming out of his mouth instead of reading about it and on a website, I'm sure it's very different. But it's no golden age, and I'm 68 years old, and it's never been this bad. I'll say it. I can say that with confidence.
The highlight of, I guess for me, even though I wasn't watching it, but if I had been watching it, the highlight would have come right at the beginning, and then it would all have clearly gone downhill from there. But when Representative Al Green stood up as people were walking in, specifically Trump, and held up a sign saying that Black people aren't apes, and then he was led out of the chamber for doing that.
Yeah.
Like,
well,
forced out of the chamber for holding up that sign.
He thinks he's a king, and you know what? The last time we had a king, what we did. So he thinks he's a king, and all the Tories that support him think he's a king.
Thought it was wild that he was saying, Trump, that his tariffs, he's going to go ahead and do them anyway, and that they're going to replace the personal income tax. And then one of the outlets, and I'm blanking which one it was, but apparently one of the outlets cut to Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who had this like stony look on her face.
Yeah, you're going to have to do.
Because she was one of the ones that was like, no, you're not doing this.
You're going to have to literally cut
Seriously,
his
folks.
legs out from under
I
him.
want to hear. I want someone to call in 952-946-6205 and give me your take. Even if you watched it or if you didn't watch it and you're catching up with it like we are today, sifting through all of the reactions. If you watched the People's State of the Union, I know Midas Touch was broadcasting that last night as well. Very curious to get folks' take because all of this is, and I just want to say, because going into yesterday, CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton was going through polling numbers, and he was saying before the State of the Union that Donald Trump, this is a quote, Donald Trump has never been weaker going into a State of the Union address, and weaker by a considerable amount. His net approval rating with independents is negative 27.
Yeah.
In his first term, the lowest it got was negative 15.
Well, if you think about it, like we were just reading about an ICE assault in Brooklyn. So this terror that we said is coming to your town, and that cannot help his numbers. Not that I care about the numbers, I care about humans, but it cannot help his numbers either any place they go.
47 points underwater.
Yeah.
With
Well,
independence.
he'll be down to 28%. That's my prediction is when 28% of the country approves of him, the Republicans will turn on him like changing their spring wardrobe. They will not be able to tolerate that level of hatred from the American people. And if it gets worse than that, then we're all in trouble. But that's my prediction. 28%.
Also, going through the reactions to it, I absolutely loved. I didn't even know that she was still around. I thought like she'd been fallen into a chasm somewhere because I haven't heard from her in so long. And so I thought like, oh, good. Maybe like wherever she came and got her and took her back to whatever demon dimension she's from. But Ann Coulter.
Oh, God. Good Lord.
She tweeted on X that this is what she literally said. That beautiful ending to Trump's State of the Union address reminds me why we can't have a second, third, or fourth generation immigrant as president. Love for our country has to be in your genes. Fun fact. Trump is a second-generation immigrant through his Scottish-born side of the family, and he is a third-generation immigrant through his German paternal grandparents.
Yeah, the horrible people that spawned him came from Bavaria specifically.
So it's like...
And Ann Coulter is as dumb as this desk. Shame on her.
But to bring out the white nationalism so clear, I mean, that's what they're doing now, right? For the past year, they're bringing out the white nationalism, saying this is who we are, this is what we're going to do.
Yep.
The end. So voters are going to have to make a choice about that in November.
Yeah.
But to literally be saying that you can't be a second or third generation immigrant and be president of the United States is just. What?
But I think there's
they're just going for it. They're going for it.
A question I have is, though, there's a lot of people who aren't racist who will tolerate terrible things because they want some other thing. Like Christians, for example.
Jim.
Some people of faith are tolerating some pretty unchristian
some Christian nationalists.
Things, right? So there's they're playing to not just people in white hoods, but they're playing to people that tolerate it.
You mean the KKK hoods?
Yeah, they're playing to people that will look the other way, and now the atrocities are getting so Nazi-like that I can't imagine that any of them aren't having a doubt. Every Catholic priest who says, "What am I doing?" The Pope can speak up. What am I doing? How am I helping? And every other minister and every other layperson should be having that same thought. What am I doing?
The Pope turned down an invitation from J.D. Vance to attend an event, and instead he's going to go to an event that's for migrants and immigration. So I thought that was some lovely shade from Pope.
Well done.
I am so disappointed that nobody called in to tell
Nobody
us
watched it. I
their.
think
Well, maybe
nobody-
that's it. People listening to this show didn't watch it, just like we didn't watch it. But we are going to take a break here. We're going to have Jake Wittich, managing editor of Windy City Times, when we come back.
This is Santita Jackson, Minneapolis, St. Paul. I couldn't be more excited about starting our days together, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 a.m. Central, on the Progressive Voice of Minnesota.
Winter reading, losing yourself under a blanket with the fireplace blazing away while submerging yourself in a book and trying to finish just one more page? Winter nights are the perfect time to read, and that's where Next Chapter Booksellers can help. They're independently owned and have all the bestsellers and new releases. Not sure what to get? Their friendly booksellers are great at recommendations. That's your winter reading headquarters. Next Chapter Booksellers off Snelling and Grand. More at nextchapterbooksellers.com.
Step into Forts, a fort-building wonderland at Children's Theater Company through April 5th. Theatrical elements, evolving light and soundscapes, and towers of cardboard boxes set the scene for creative play. Build the tallest fort, the longest fort, or tons of cozy little forts. Design a castle or a neighborhood. Your imagination leads the way as you play freely and create shared stories together in real life. Forts at CTC through April 5th. Spring break weekdays available. Tickets at childrenstheater.org.
Crooners is a classic supper club with a wide range of entertainment. Make your reservations for a parade of international, national, and local artists in the main stage showroom, the intimate Dunsmore Jazz Room, or outdoors at the seasonal Belvedere Under the Stars space. Or enjoy Maggie's Piano Lounge. Enjoy 4-star food and drinks with first-class supper club service. What are you waiting for? Go to croonersmn.com for more information and schedule. That's croonersmn.com.
Hey, it's Patrick for Zero Res. February is the month for love, so when was the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it deserves? Maybe you've been procrastinating on the holiday post-mortem cleanup at your house. Are you worried if you got down on your hands and knees what you might see or smell? Not only is your carpet one of the biggest investments in your home, but it's also the largest air filter in your home. And what's worse, you're going to be stuck inside breathing this nasty stuff for months. Lucky for you, Zero Res is going to spread the love to you and your home. This month, get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at just $119 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Call my friends at Zero Res right now, 952-ZERO-RES, or go online to ZeroResMinnesota.com and say you want the AM 950 special. A 4.9 rating on Google reviews and over 21,000 satisfied customers can't be wrong. Backward or forward spells the same. Zero Res.
With your AM 950 weather, I'm Brett Johnson. Look for sunny skies today with a high near 22, tonight cloudy with a low around 15, and Thursday sunny with a high near 41. From bold Szechuan flavors to tender Peking Mandarin classics, the Great Wall Restaurant offers something for everyone. Try favorites like the Mushu pork and beef and broccoli. The Great Wall Restaurant is located at 4515 France Avenue, and their full menu is available at greatwallrestaurant.us. That's greatwallrestaurant.us.
This is AM 950, the progressive voice of Minnesota.
Coming to you from the studios of AM 950 KTNF. I just love, sorry, the shade of that music, Patrick. That's exactly the music they should have used last night for the State of the Union.
Yep.
Oh my God. All right. You are listening to AM 950 Radio, the progressive voice of Minnesota. And we are also airing on WCPT 820, Chicago's Progressive Talk. Welcome back to The Gailey Show. It is 33 minutes after the hour. I'm John Parker. Jim Pounds, my executive producer, is here in the studio with me. We are continuing our 2026 election coverage. If you missed our interview and conversation with U.S. Senate candidate Dakari Lariat from Monday, you can find that on our YouTube channel or everywhere you find your podcasts, or on our websites, am950radio.com or heartlandsignal.com. Yesterday, we were talking with Columbia Heights Mayor Amada Marquez Simula, who is running for the Minnesota House District 33B. You can also find that on all of the platforms that I just mentioned. We are going to continue that coverage now. Windy City Times has been the voice of Chicago's LGBTQ plus community since 1985. This year marks the news outlet's 40th anniversary of uplifting queer stories, reporting with pride, and chronicling LGBTQ plus history. You can visit windycitytimes.com/newsletters to sign up for the publication's excellent weekly LGBTQ news updates. Jake Wittich is managing editor of Windy City Times, where he reports in-depth stories on Chicago's queer community and oversees the publication's growing newsletter operation. And he was the Chicago Journalists Association's Journalist of the Year for 2025. He joins us bi-weekly here on Wednesdays. Jake, it's great to see you again.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Thanks for having me.
All right, so 2026 election coverage. Zoey Carter is running for the Illinois House seat 93rd District. Tell us about it. Who is Zoey and what is their platform?
Yeah, so Zoey Carter is a working class transgender woman in central Illinois, and she's actually the first out trans woman to run for the state legislature in Illinois. So pretty significant there. She's running in the 93rd district, which is a rural area of Illinois. Like I said, she is working class. She comes from retail and a manufacturing background, and she lives in a small town called Pekin, Illinois. She is a 7th generation Pekinite. Her family settled here and has lived here ever since. She's the first one in her family to graduate from high school. And she is running on access. She's seeing that rural communities in Illinois are losing a lot of resources, whether it's grocery stores, healthcare institutions, schools, anything. And they have to travel very far to access these things. So she wants to bring that back to rural Illinois and make sure that the cost of them is affordable.
We just lost our Shell Lake grocery store in the last 2 weeks in Wisconsin. So,
yeah,
I can relate.
That was rough. That was rough. Can you speak more to Zoey's background and how she is using that into the platform that she's creating for potential constituents?
I will. I do want. I'll get to that in a second because I actually want to touch on some challenges she's had in this race first. Yeah, she is challenging a Republican incumbent, Travis Weaver. And our primary election is coming up later in March, and she actually is not going to be on the ballot for this. She had petitioned, she got a bunch of signatures, but there was a petition challenge over her filing of the paperwork. So they determined she did not have enough legitimate signatures, so they took her off the ballot. However, she's still continuing her campaign. And she's hoping to be on the ballot come the general. There are a few pathways in Illinois that you can still appear on the general election ballot, even if you weren't on the primary. I won't get into those details because it's a little too complicated for me to lay out in layman's terms, but she's still hoping to be on the ballot, like I said, and she's not scared. You know, she said, of course they would do this when a trans woman is knocking on doors and running for office in an area like Pekin, Illinois. People are going to notice. So she thinks that her opponent is scared, and that's why he did this.
They will resort to any tactics they can to prevent democracy and prevent specifically queer and trans people from having positions of power. So let's talk to, because there was a great thing in your article about how Zoey Carter's LGBTQ advocacy was shaped by her rural experience. Those two things are often seen in antithesis to each other or in conflict with each other. Talk to us about Zoey's advocacy.
Yeah, exactly. I actually teased this on the show a couple weeks ago because I sat next to her at the Equality Illinois Gala, and she talked to me then about how she loves living in rural Illinois. There's a myth, I guess, that queer people only exist in big city hubs or things like that, but queer people are everywhere. And not every queer person wants to move to a Chicago or a Minneapolis or New York City. Some of them live in rural areas and they love it. They've lived there their whole lives. They have loved ones there, communities there. So she doesn't want to leave, and she's proud to be from rural Illinois. And you'd think she would have a lot of challenges there, but she said for the most part, people accept her as an out trans woman, which is really cool. But she kind of got involved in LGBTQ plus organizing in 2023. There was a protest in Peoria, which led her to found the Rural Equality Project, and then worked with various local LGBTQ plus organizations. And then last year, she launched the Pekin Pride Festival, which is going to happen again this year. So she's definitely gotten involved. She did. She's appeared at Transgender Day of Visibility events and things like that. And she really wants to make sure that queer people in rural areas feel that they have a home there.
There's something that also you touched on in the article was around healthcare, right? So clearly we have all of the federal level legislative court attacks and court attacks on transgender and gender affirming care. But also happening in rural areas is a defunding of healthcare, just generally speaking, through the big, beautiful bill, so-called, last year. Can you speak to that kind of healthcare intersection that Zoey can really speak to, I think, in a compelling way than other candidates cannot?
Yeah, as we touched on in this episode, a lot of rural areas are losing their hospitals and their healthcare institutions. So say they have an emergency in Pekin, Illinois, they have to drive at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, or even 2 hours in some cases to access healthcare. And she experienced this firsthand when she was trying to access gender affirming care when she began her medical transition. And she said she would drive like an hour and a half just to go to her appointments. And she said she was able to do that. She has a car, she had the time to do that, but not everyone has that luxury. So there's intersections, I guess, like the same way that transgender people need healthcare access, so does everybody else. And that's really what she's trying to say here. Like her trans identity, she said, is not the forefront of this campaign. It's just a bonus to it. And she says it's a vehicle for people to maybe understand, like, maybe trans people better, but also they could listen to stories of her trans experience and understand how it relates to their own experience. So she wants to reopen the healthcare institutions across her district and things like that.
If you're having a heart attack, 2 hours is too long.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's the end. So
well, I guess I'm really hung up on the healthcare stuff because we're starting to see it here in Minnesota, where the Trump administration is, with Children's Minnesota, and 2 days from now, they're going to stop providing some gender affirming care to their patients. But it's not just, the thing that people, I feel like, haven't fully grasped yet is that it's not stopping with queer folks. You know what I mean? In the queer community, like they're finding success here, and now you're finding in rural areas that there aren't any OGBYNs. Right. So if you want to have a kid, you have to drive an hour and a half, 2 hours away to get that type of a care. Like you were just talking about, a heart attack. Like if there isn't some place that can deal with an appendectomy or a heart attack or any other type of thing, you have to be flown out by helicopter. I would freak the F out if I had to suddenly be on a helicopter to be sent somewhere for whatever. I would literally just panic and have a panic attack, and they'd have to induce a coma or something.
That would kill you
because just being in the helicopter would freak me out. So I think it's really interesting when we see a candidate like Zoey coming in and saying and having that healthcare aspect, because what's happening in rural areas is so dangerous right now. And so to see her leaning into that, I think is really compelling really as a candidate.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about healthcare too, I do want to talk about gender affirming care. In Illinois, we've seen so many hospitals and healthcare systems cower to the Trump administration and suspend that healthcare for transgender youth. She criticized the hospitals in our interview, and she said they should not be doing this, and the state actually needs to do a better job to make sure those hospitals are still funded if they continue this life-saving healthcare.
Yes, there's the funding issue. And then there's also, I feel like, the legal issue of, are those hospitals violating Illinois and Minnesota state laws by doing what they're doing? Because as we found out here, Children's Minnesota is still going to be offering all of that care that they're denying to trans and non-binary kids, to cisgender kids. Right. So it's like you are deliberately targeting someone based off of their identity, and that is a violation of Illinois human rights laws and Minnesota human rights laws. But I can't get into that story right now. We are talking with Jake Wittich, who is managing editor of Windy City Times. Jake, there's the story that we're just still so bummed here about Jesse Jackson's passing. You had such a beautiful profile and remembrance of him last week, particularly around his HIV and LGBTQ plus legacy and how it was reshaping coalition politics. I'm literally reading the headline that you wrote last week, and I think we're all thinking of what does the coalition look like right now to resist the fascism in this country. And he was just so, I mean, he created the modern day coalition movement. I would just say that from my political viewpoint. But tell us about the article that you wrote about him and the legacy that he had.
Yeah, this was a really interesting article for me to do. I had known that Jesse Jackson was an LGBTQ ally. I just didn't know the full history of it. And I think that's actually a shame. We should teach it more because it's really impressive all he did for us. I'll start with the HIV angle because I interviewed Ray Lewis Thornton. She is a Black woman, a straight ally of the LGBTQ plus community, and she worked with Jesse Jackson through Rainbow Push and on both of his presidential campaigns. And she was living with HIV for several years before she finally came out to Jesse Jackson and told her her status. It had reached AIDS at that point, and she was close to dying. And she was in his office, and she told him she was so scared that he would not really accept her, or maybe there would be rejection, not because of him, but just that's how people with AIDS, that's the stigma they were facing at the time. But he simply told her, I loved you before AIDS, and I love you with AIDS. And I just think that's really powerful, especially at that time. And what Ray Lewis Thornton told me is that moment encapsulates the level of humanity he showed everyone, whether it was people living with HIV, LGBTQ plus people, Black folks, Latino folks, anyone, you know, he showed them that level of humanity. So it was really interesting.
Can you talk about him bringing queer rights into the coalition? Because with democratic politics, that wasn't always the case. And there was AIDS crisis going on. And I think there were a lot of people that were freaked out and not being good coalition members. Can you talk about how he was creating that coalition and bringing queer rights into it?
Of course. So we all know he ran for president in 1984. And actually, before he announced his official campaign, he attended a Human Rights Campaign Fund dinner. This was the precursor to the Human Rights Campaign. And while he was there, he signaled, I intend to run for president. And the fact that he would appear at a dinner like that while he's gearing up for a presidential run gave a lot of legitimacy to the gay movement that was building at that time. And it showed that he saw the LGBTQ movement. At the time, it was called the gay and lesbian movement. He saw their power and welcomed them into the coalition, which was really cool. So I spoke with Bill Williams. He was an editor at Windy City Times and Gay Life and in the 80s, 90s. And he covered some of Jesse Jackson's advocacy throughout the years. So he really put it into perspective for me and said that moment was huge. And then when he was running for president in 1984 at the DNC, he was the very first presidential candidate to ever say gay and lesbian and call for their rights in a DNC speech, which is just huge. Yeah.
Wow. We are talking with Jake Wittich, who is the managing editor of Windy City Times. I have a couple more questions about this article. I have to fit in a quick break. However, you can keep the conversation going on our Blue Sky. We are at thegayleyshow.org on Blue Sky. You can follow us there and send me all sorts of fun messages about how you're enjoying the show or what you'd like us to cover. Also, subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. We're a quarter of our way to our goal of becoming a partner program on YouTube. Subscribe and help us get to that goal. Quick break, more after that.
Psst, it's me, your heart. High blood pressure is serious, and if you think I'm just going to keep ticking away, you're wrong. I can quit whenever I want, but I like my job. Just treat me better. Maybe we can do some exercise on occasion. After all, we're in this together.
Don't let your heart quit on you. High blood pressure can lead to a stroke, heart attack, or death. Get yours to a healthy range before it's too late. Find out how at heart.org/blood pressure. A message from the American Heart Association, the American Stroke Association, and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Patrick for Zero Res. February is the month for love, so when was the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it deserves? Maybe you've been procrastinating on the holiday post-mortem cleanup at your house. Are you worried if you got down on your hands and knees what you might see or smell? Not only is your carpet one of the biggest investments in your home, but it's also the largest air filter in your home. And what's worse, you're going to be stuck inside breathing this nasty stuff for months. Lucky for you, Zero Res is going to spread the love to you and your home. This month, get 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at just $119 and take $75 off your air duct cleaning. Call my friends at Zero Res right now, 952-ZERO-RES, or go online to ZeroResMinnesota.com and say you want the AM 950 special. A 4.9 rating on Google reviews and over 21,000 satisfied customers can't be wrong. Backward or forward spells the same. Zero Res.
Greg Bakken here. I've told you about the out-of-the-world roast beef sandwiches at Maverick's Real Roast Beef, but I haven't told you about their Philly steak sandwiches, turkey bacon avocado sandwich, BLT, crispy chicken, fish sandwiches, brisket, or pulled pork. Okay, you get the idea. They make a lot of delicious food to the same standard as their famous roast beef sandwiches, and now I'm starving. I'm going to go to Maverick's Real Roast Beef off Lexington and Roseville, and you need to go too. Check out their menu at mavericksbeef.com.
Would you let animals pick your insurance? Do you really need to experience mayhem to get the best rates? Or how about a celebrity quarterback or fake university saving you money? There's a lot of marketing stunts when it comes to insurance, but what you really need is someone looking out for you. Call Array Insurance, and they will work hard to find you the best insurance coverage and rates. To avoid gimmicks, call Cheryl at Array, 763-504-3067, or arrayinsurance.com. Array Insurance, working hard for you.
Celebrate Valentine's with the perfect musical. The Chameleon Theater Circle is proud to present I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change. Bright, sexy, witty, and fun, this show will appeal to anyone who has ever fallen into the deep end of love and come up gasping for air. Shows run 3 weekends starting February 13th at Inver Hills Community College. Just Google Chameleon Theater to see times and reserve tickets. I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change with the Chameleon Theater Circle. Get your tickets now.
Welcome back to The Gailey Show. I'm John Parker in studio with my executive producer, Jim Pounds. We are coming up on the top of the hour and talking with managing editor of Windy City Times, Jake Wittich, who joins us bi-weekly on Wednesdays to share his excellent award-winning reporting from the Windy City. Jake, before the break, we were talking about Reverend Jesse Jackson and his legacy, particularly as it related to the queer community. As part of your article memorializing that, you also spoke with Alderman Lamont Robinson from the 4th Ward. Tell us about what he told you.
Of course. I want to squeeze in real quick. He also, at the 1987 March on Washington for Lesbian and Gay Rights, Jesse Jackson was a co-leader. He spoke there and he said everybody needs equal protection under the law. And he called for a national health care plan to support people living with AIDS.
It was everywhere.
He really was.
I did not, until I read your article, I was like, I did not know like half of this. Like,
I know.
On.
I've interviewed him before and I didn't know this. So really cool to learn. And what the point that Alderman Lamont Robinson made when I spoke with him, some context, Lamont Robinson used to go to Rainbow Push's Saturday morning forums as a kid. His father would take him there and he'd learn about justice and things like that. But Jesse Jackson was an ally to the LGBTQ plus community, even when it wasn't popular. There were a lot of religious leaders in his community who criticized his allyship to people who are queer or living with HIV, but Jesse Jackson was unafraid of the backlash, and he stood 10 toes down with us. Alderman Lamont Robinson told me he made it known that we were part of the full rainbow.
Mm-hmm. I will never forget that fire truck is exactly what I'm feeling right now. But I will never when he was crying during Obama's acceptance speech in 2008, the look on his face was like, oh, the meaning of the moment. It was like, oh, You know when you feel something and then you see someone else like having it and you're like, oh, the moment that you're feeling there. Thank you, Jake, for this really lovely memorial to Reverend Jackson. It was really important and so informative. Again, like I said, so much of it I had no idea about, and I am super jealous that you got to interview him. That's really special as well. All right, you also to transition to another story that you've got for us, a first look at the Backbeat Hotel, which is planned for Northalsted. Tell us more.
Yeah, I've been teasing this hotel in my reporting for maybe a year and a half now, but now they've unveiled the name of it and the official renderings of what it's going to look like. Its name is Backbeat, which is a nod to the house music scene, which was birthed in Chicago. So that's where it gets its name. And it's basically going to be the first boutique hotel in the Northalsted LGBTQ district. Wow. 6 stories, 50 floors. What I'm really excited is they'll have some amenities open to the public. So they're going to have a rooftop with a retractable roof that could be opened year round. And on that rooftop is a pool and a bar, which is so cool. Yeah. And then the ground. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say, you said 50 floors. You mean 50 rooms?
Yes. Thank you for that. 50 rooms, 6 floors. The ground floor will have a restaurant with indoor and outdoor space. And then the basement will have another bar and a music venue. So really cool amenities that the public can drop into. And then travelers can come to Chicago, spend their money in our LGBTQ district. And I think it really signals a leveling up of the Northalsted neighborhood to compete, maybe not compete with the likes of like Fire Island, but it really legitimizes us as a queer travel destination.
Right. Remind me, when does it open?
Not until 2028. So they're demolishing the current building this summer, and then it's going to be followed by about 16 to 18 months of construction.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the big news today is there's another hotel that developers just announced is coming to Northalsted. So this one is owned by Tristan Shoecraft. He is a gay businessman who owns the Abbey. He owns like 75% of the Fire Island district. And he owns other hotels in Puerto Vallarta, San Juan. He's opening them all over the place. Wow. And he's going to open one in Chicago on the Northalsted Strip. So that just came out today.
So something's happening there. I mean, somebody's got some insight that this is you had talked about how
place to invest in.
Got expensive, a little bit for people to live. So
yeah,
be attracting.
Yeah, and I think we see the gayborhoods being, I guess, erased or just losing their identity around the country. But Northalsted, Boys Town, whatever you want to call it, has really stuck around. And there's reasons why we have the rainbow pillars that were set up to like anchor that identity there. All the businesses, not all of them, but a lot of businesses are anchored there. And then I think now the next level is like, okay, let's really solidify this as a queer travel destination. And I think that's going to give it even more longevity as a gayborhood. And I don't see it disappearing anytime soon.
That's great.
Well, I think, there was that whole push, like we shouldn't have to be, we've created those communities, the gayborhoods, because we wanted a safe place to just be ourselves and live our lives. And then like the next stage of like acceptance was, well, we don't all have to live in West Hollywood, right? Or, on Fire Island or wherever, like, we can live in other places. And now I think we're coming like full circle back again to, we need these places because fascism persistently exists in this stupid country. Yeah. I did want to point out to folks, though, in Jake's article, the first look article, there are all these gorgeous renderings that you've included in there of what this place is going to look like. And that's why I was asking him, like, I hope it's opening this year, but 2028. Okay, whatever. I'll just have to wait and stare at these pictures, which are gorgeous.
I will say, go to windycitytimes.com. We have all the photos. This story came out on Friday, and surprisingly, no other news outlet has really jumped on this story yet. So if you want to see the photos, we got them, windycitytimes.com.
Perfect. That's a great segue because we are at our time today. Go to windycitytimes.com. Join me and Jim in reading the excellent newsletters that Jake puts out every week. They're just absolutely delightful. You can sign up there at windycitytimes.com. We'll see you back here in a couple weeks, Jake.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thank you, folks, for listening today. In Chicago on WCPT 820, it's time for Democracy Now! In Minneapolis on AM 950 Radio, it's time for the Matt McNeil Show. Stay tuned after that for Native Roots Radio. And then at 10 p.m. Central, step into the unknown with Greg Bakken on Ghost Box Radio. And until this time tomorrow, keep it queer, America.
Keep it queer.
Keep it queer.